Most people know that the sunshine harvester, the Owen submachine gun, the Hills Hoist, the Victa mower, the pedal radio and Vegemite were all invented by Australians. But would you be surprised to learn that Ugg boots, the water gel blanket, self-service petrol pumps, the electric steel guitar, the Rotolactor mechanical milking machine, the surf ski and the shockproof tin hat were also Australian inventions? Join us now as we examine the great and the not-so-great inventions that have come about as a result of ingenuity, hard work and good old Aussie know-how. As early as the 19th century, Australians have shown both originality and proficiency in their attempt to save time and minimise effort. In 1876, Richard Bowyer Smith designed the stump jump plough, which actually jumped over stumps while tilling the soil, allowing farmers to get immediate results from pastures that have only been partly cleared. Then in 1874, a 19-year-old Victorian, Hugh Mackay, invented the sunshine harvester, a remarkable machine that dramatically improved farming efficiency as it stripped, threshed, cleaned and bagged wheat all in one continuous operation. Hugh Mackay was a good friend of the Reverend John Flynn, whose dream was to establish a flying doctor service for the people of the Australian outback. When Hugh Mackay died, he remembered John Flynn in his will, giving him the necessary funds to establish his first Royal Flying Doctor Service base at Cloncurry in Queensland in May 1928. But had it not been for the ingenuity of Alf Traeger, who overcame the problem of outback communication by inventing the pedal radio, John Flynn's Royal Flying Doctor Service might never have got off the ground. During the 20th century, Australia has seen a number of clever and inventive people take a simple idea and develop it to become part of the Australian way of life. One such person was the Melbourne food processor Fred Walker, who in 1922, with his colleague, food technologist Dr. Cyril Collister, developed Australia's most famous food spread, Vegemite, using yeast left over from making beer. Little did they realise that it was destined to become an Australian icon and would be recommended by nursing sisters in the 1940s as the cure-all for the ills of small children.
Yes, that sometimes happens with children. Now, I suggest you mix a little Vegemite in with his milk and give him Vegemite spread on bread and butter. Most children adore Vegemite, and it's good for them from the age of 5 months or even younger.
That sister was right. Albert's got his appetite back with a vengeance. And see how he laps up his milk now.
In 1941, during World War II, a young Wollongong motor mechanic, Evelyn Ernest Owen, designed a light, portable submachine gun that, under test, was found to outperform the American Thompson and British Sten machine guns, particularly in the jungles of New Guinea. It was sturdy and cheap, immune to mud, and capable of firing 800 rounds a minute. Army Minister Percy Spender was so impressed with the gun's potential that he ordered it into mass production. The Owen gun, named in honour of its inventor, proved to be the most reliable weapon in all conditions used in World War II. Washing was always hung out to dry on a wire and prop clothesline, until Lance Hill developed his rotary clothes hoist in Adelaide in 1945. Improvised from a few lengths of steel tubing and a roll of galvanised wire, the hoist spun freely in the breeze and could be raised and lowered with a winding mechanism. It was only ever meant to be a one-off, but today it has been said that there are more Hills hoists in some Australian suburbs than trees. In 1952, Mervyn Victor Richardson, tired of cutting his backyard grass with a conventional push mower, developed a petrol-driven power mower, which it was claimed would turn grass into lawn. The Victa rotary lawnmower was not only light, inexpensive and easy to use, it was tough enough for the most difficult of Australian lawns. Like the Hills Hoist and Vegemite, the Victa lawnmower has also achieved recognition as an Australian icon. But not every Australian invention has achieved the status of icon. There have been a number of inventions that have actually worked, but for various reasons have not stood the test of time. Some that seemed like a good idea at the time, and others that were a complete waste of time and effort from the start.
To guide people through Melbourne, especially visitors and new Australians, the first of a series of city guides has been installed at Flinders Street Railway Station. The guide's in the form of a special map, on which is listed every street in the metropolitan area. A new Australian from Norway introduced it. By looking up the index and turning a knob, the street required is pinpointed by a rule marked with letters. Each street has a letter and a number. The numbers run down the side of the chart. Combine a letter and a number, and there's the place you're looking for. The revolving index contains 12,000 street names, police stations, post offices, hospitals and business houses. Routes and transport marked on the chart indicate the quickest way to get to any destination. It's a city guide with everything. In fact, if you look very, very closely, you might even find the site of the Olympic Games. The Foster brothers of Yallourn, Victoria, have invented a slot machine petrol pump. It sells petrol in units of 2 shillings worth up to £1. Just put in the money and the Bowser does the rest, even to returning dud 2 bobs, washers and discs. The Fosters say their invention is designed as an emergency service, not to displace garage hands. Motorists will be glad to get any kind of service after being kicked from pillar to post for years. They are tired of no petrol after 5:30 daily, afternoon on Saturday and most of Sunday. Petrol's an essential service and should be available day and night. This invention will make sure that it is. A handy anyone can operate method of filling a tank after hours. Already the idea has met opposition, but Australia's hundreds of thousands of motorists who pay heavy registration, insurance and petrol tax will welcome it. Especially doctors, taximen and just ordinary blokes caught short. With the 2 bob in the slot machine, no service station will be justified in putting up closed, no petrol. In fact, they'll be service stations again.
Two Australian musical inventors, Ray Olsen at the left and Jack Richards, claim that their portable console electric steel guitar will revolutionize guitar playing. The 5 foot pedals control a chord-changing unit that can produce more than 25 different chords at any one position, making possible a range of melodies with full chromatic harmony. This is a little technical for me, but you'll agree it plays very sweetly.
This arrangement will give you some idea of the possibilities of the instrument.
Solving problems thousands of times faster than any human being, an electronic brain has been built at the CSIRO by young scientists Jason Beard and Trevor Piercy. 1,500 radio valves for the brain cells of this scientific marvel. Let's take a typical problem. Is that typical enough? 2 and 2 well, let's leave it to the brain. A mathematician punches details of the problem onto cards. They operate like a pianola roll. except that these holes represent numbers and not notes. The cards then produce reactions in the brain. While working out problems at fantastic speeds, the brain remains silent, but it clatters into activity as the automatic typewriter taps out the answers. No headaches here, as it will solve in a few minutes problems for industry and science which would otherwise take months.
Sunny skies and good surf turn most Australian beaches into aquatic carnival. The first surfboard brought to Australia was this solid one used by Hawaiian Duke Kahanamoku in 1915. Then evolution led to the long hollow board at the right, a lighter and more buoyant affair. And finally came the surf ski, an Australian invention. In this, all the cross-sections are drilled to save weight. But nevertheless, solid building is needed to withstand heavy seas. The decking is extra lightweight laminated or plywood. It's the case of all hands on deck, because there's nowhere to go below. Careful screwing down adds to strength and watertightness, and then it's ready for the big adventures of the rolling surf. When a wave comes aboard, it just rolls off like water off a duck's back. If you fall into the scuppers, you've fallen off the board. Collisions are very rare, as the surfers exercise skillful control. Paddle hard or you'll miss this one. He's got it. And away he goes on a rushing, roaring roller coaster. There's poetry in the slow-motion view of sunlit spray, with man standing triumphant as conqueror of the waves, moving with majestic momentum towards his own terrain.
With the growth of shipbuilding and smelting works at WWII, South Australia, the water pipeline from Morgan has had to be substantially increased. The 9-inch pipes are being replaced with 36-inch ones, and these are very special pipes. They're made in this factory at Port Pirie, and they're pre-stressed and tested to a pressure of 600 pounds per square inch. The Australian company holds world patents for the process, and now Japan, India, Pakistan, Switzerland, West Germany and the United States are using the same process under license from the Australian company. Wire winding is part of the pre-stressing, and 28 miles of these pipes will be built for the WWII water supply alone. An Australian process which has been adopted throughout the world.
The invention was designed by my son and myself for the destruction of noxious weeds, blackberry, lantana, or grasshoppers. It is based on the original flammewerfer used in the Great War. This is a happy example of turning these swords into plowshares. I'll now give you a demonstration of the apparatus in the destruction of blackberry. We'll use it on a rather tough clump, right hand here.
At Laverton Air Base, Victoria, the Civil Aviation Department tests new methods. The tender provides foam to smother the fire set in an old Lincoln bomber, while asbestos-suited firefighters race towards the plane itself to cut the passengers free. They use a portable electric saw to tear through the fuselage, taking out a square section through which those inside can escape. All right when the heat's not particularly intense, but when it is, the CDA has an Australian-invented tender to go into action. The tender moves swiftly towards the wreck, laying down a blanket of foam as it goes. But watch the front of the tender. See that unusual type of circular saw rotating? Now it's cutting through the fuselage, leaving an escape hole. Asbestos escape blankets are dropped. Firemen can enter the plane to drag victims clear. An Australian invention that could save lives in that biggest danger of all flying, the fire that follows a crash landing. It is expected to be standard equipment on all Australian airports soon.
Mr. H.A. Power of Royal Melbourne Technical College has invented a machine that gives new hope to kiddies who live in the twilight world of partial sight. It's a projection reader, and this is the first commercial model bought by the Davy family of Miners Rest for their daughter Maureen. Maureen sits at the machine and Mr. Power holds a storybook against it. The projection reader magnifies the type 3 times, so that Maureen, whose sight is only 20% effective, can read without difficulty. Maureen helped test Mr. Power's original invention some months ago. Now this one is here, a machine that will bring the world of books to those with failing sight. For Maureen, it's like a fairy tale come true at last.
Arriving at Kingsford Smith Airport, Sydney, is a unique and famous Australian, the world's first pilotless jet plane, Jindavic. Here shown dismantled for transport, the aircraft will go on display at Sydney University. Used for experimental work at Woomera Rocket Range, the all-metal Jindavic is powered by an Armstrong-Siddeley Viper engine. At altitudes of 50,000 feet, the plane is capable of supersonic speeds. Playing an important part in guided missile, radar and radio control experiments, Jindavic prototypes are now made under licence in the United States. Australia's contribution to the advance of modern science. A demonstration in Victoria of the latest methods of getting an army truck from point A to point B in the quickest possible time, even with a ravine in between. The invention of Major Fred Miller, it employs 2 parallel cables and special discs fitted to the wheels. The Major first developed the idea in Malaya, which provides a simple method of crossing terrain otherwise impassable without the construction of bridges. The installation takes well under an hour to complete and has been tested over distances up to 250 feet. The cables will support a load of 27 tonnes and will take speeds up to 30 miles an hour. No wonder the Army and many civilian inquirers are up in the air about it. This car has no feet on its controls because Bert Tate of Taringa, Queensland designed a clutch, brake and acceleration control to aid disabled and legless soldiers. Mr. Tate was in the Army when he heard that the NRMA sought such a device, and after 8 months developed the compact apparatus which only needs certain small adjustments to the engine and steering wheel to make it suitable for use by a legless driver. As you can see, the new control fits onto the standard gear shift. A push on the button and hey presto, the clutch works. He turns the control and the brake operates as well. Mr. Tate gives Movie Tone a demonstration as he drives under limbless conditions. The brake and clutch are vacuum operated from the induction manifold. The throttle is mechanically operated by a Bowden cable and casing. Our cameraman, Sydney Wood, gets this view as the car speeds along with Mr. Tate's legs tucked up onto the seat. The control is instantaneous, bringing safe driving within the reach of the legless.
Australian aviation has been remarkably free from disasters, but now a young West Australian has invented a device to make it even safer. Representatives of British, American and Australian instrument firms are given a demonstration of the device at Melbourne Airport. It's a metal ball named the Augill Aircraft Safety Unit after its inventor. Electrical panels in one half of the ball are wired to various vulnerable parts of the aircraft. The ball itself is fitted in the tail of an aircraft and ejects itself in case of a crash. A special flight with simulated structural failures is staged to show the effectiveness of the device. The inventor claims it will give warning of metal fatigue, oil failure, engine failure and fire, and so prevent accidents. It shows up false immediately. There's one shown now. An Australian invention that can give a pilot warning of impending danger. A tiny ball to save lives.
Autumn's a wonderful time as the leaves change color, but they do make a mess of the parks when they fall. Or they did until Fred Wheel and Fred Caper of Melbourne invented this outsized vacuum cleaner. They picked a tough day for their demonstration because the leaves are wet and heavy after rain. But the monster vacuum sucks them up in a jiffy. I suppose if you drove one of these round a park for 24 hours, you'd be an all-day sucker too. As you see, it goes in one end and you just tip it out the other. It sucks leaves and it leaves nothing.
Young Sydney businessman Shane Steadman owns one of several Australian companies in the surfboard making business. But come winter, the demands of the summer months drop away, and so do the profits. But Shane's company has a second interest that's growing faster than Topsy. They're making lambskin boots, the demand for which is not only causing a mini revolution in the young fashion world, but keeping Shane's company a little more flat to the boards, to coin a phrase. The boots, with the fleece turned in for warmth and stitched to leather soles, are selling at the rate of 1,500 pairs a week, and there's a demand for even more. They call the fleecy-lined boots Uggs. The idea originally was that they might be worn by winter surfing enthusiasts. But now that Uggs have caught on with the younger brigade, they're being turned out in various sizes, ankle length and knee length. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering where the name Ugg comes from, well, so are we.
Everyone likes gathering mushrooms, but now you can grow them just where you like and pick them when you wish. Two young Melbourne scientists have conducted tests for more than a year and have developed a spawn making mushroom culture available to everyone. With the care and precision of surgeons, spores from mushrooms are taken and placed in bottles. Contamination by molds, bacteria and other fungi must be avoided, so masks are worn and all instruments thoroughly sterilized. After all, 1 in every 5 offends, and mushrooms don't like it. Halitosis is the death of them. Flasks are now placed in the growing room for germination at a constant temperature of 77 degrees. In these flasks are a grain medium on which the spawn will grow. They are placed in sterilizers and are subjected to steam for an hour to kill all bacteria. The temperature is increased to 260 degrees, and then the medium is ready for inoculation with mushroom spawn. The flasks are placed on shelves where they will be kept at a constant temperature for 3 weeks. Spawn after 2 days, after a week, and after 3 weeks. The crop appears in 6 weeks, with more mushrooms every 8 or 10 days. And here's the crop, culture mushrooms of delightful flavor and delicate flesh.
Professor Rubo and his assistant, Miss Janice Edgar, in the School of Bacteriology at Melbourne University. The professor and Sydney research scientist, Dr. Zimmerman Craig, have discovered a new drug which may be the answer to TB. The drug has been called Virazide, and results on guinea pigs have been truly spectacular. But much more testing and research will be necessary before it is administered to humans. Virazide can be fed through the mouth, injected, or even given with food. It is a non-toxic, completely harmless white powder. Serious lack of funds has hampered research, but now that the discovery is showing such impressive early results, this deficiency seems likely to be soon remedied. The doctors refused to patent it and made the formula available to world scientists. This guinea pig, injected with live human TB bacilli, has tubercular ulcers showing on its shaven back. After 1 dose, 75% of the infected animals were cured.
All were cured after 3 doses. This one, for instance, completely healthy, with only tiny scars showing. Dr. Rubo and his assistant have taken constant personal risk in handling the TB bacillus. In Sydney, Dr. Zimmerman Craig of Sydney University shares honours equally with Professor Rubo. He says Virazide is 3 or 4 times as potent as previously known anti-TB drugs. The co-discoverers are confident but urge caution. Time and testing will prove whether the TB scourge is to be defeated.
Hang on! That horse is wild. Look out! He's off! A bad fall. That, call the ambulance, quick! A modern ambulance races to the scene. And now for an exhibition of first aid that's as modern as the car. Superintendent Roy Owen and officers of Canterbury Bankstown Ambulance, Sydney, are demonstrating a new, unique type of splint as they apply it to that broken leg. This splint of tubular steel sections is the Buchanan splint, invented by a Sydney doctor. It can be applied to injured legs, arms, or necks. The advantage is that it's easily and delicately adjustable. What's the operation of the winding crank? Because the injured limb is strapped firmly to sections of the splint above and below the brake, the broken ends, which are grinding against each other and causing pain and shock, can be gently and firmly drawn into their proper line. Then notice the foot lifted up to prevent swellings, and the knee and hip slightly bent in the position of comfort, just as he will be in a ward. This up-to-date ambulance only needs the one splint because of the sliding tubes. It can be used for young or old, big or small, left side or right. Yes, this new splint is certainly efficient. In your next accident, why not give it a break?
Fire trailers, really miniature fire engines, were imported into Australia until a Brisbane engineer decided they could be designed and built here. That his decision was the correct one is being proved by firemen on the Brisbane riverside. The small unit can throw jets of water 80 feet vertically into the air. Not much larger than a gas producer trailer, it can pump 600 gallons a minute through 4 jets, enough to make its presence unpopular with most fires. You simply can't have a thoroughly successful blaze with one of these nuisances around. The inventor, E.G. Anthon Wright, and Queensland's Home and Health Minister Hanlon watch it through its paces. What a boon for small towns and villages. You simply take it to the fire hooked up to the family Ford. That's if you have any petrol for the Ford. Years ago, Harry Shannon of Melbourne underwent a serious throat operation, which deprived him of his larynx and vocal cords. In consequence, he entirely lost his voice. He could communicate only by writing, but after study of how the voice is produced, he made a remarkable instrument which amazed doctors and restored his powers of speech. It consists of a metal tube containing a reed of rice paper supported by rubber bands. The operation left Shannon with a small silver tube aperture in his throat through which he breathes. By connecting his artificial voice box to this aperture, air is passed through the tube, vibrating the reed. The sound is carried to his mouth, and words are formed by his lips and tongue.
I've invented a reed by vibration, which at the present gives me the voice that I have. This instrument is most simple to talk with. It's made of an ordinary piece of rice paper, reed on ebonite. The air is drawn from the throat through the lower tube, up through the bell, into the mouth. The words are then formed and read onto the reed, which reproduces the voice. This instrument is very simple to use. It causes no irritation of the throat. And I think it will be a salvation to others who have had the same operation as myself.
Melbourne Tramway Board turns on a unique and very practical service, a pram bus for the exclusive use of women with babies and prams. The bus does a roaring trade in more ways than one. It's always capacity housed, and why shouldn't it be with this year's crop of lusty young Australians assuming record proportions? Here's hoping that the Tramway Board has to put on a dozen more pram buses. Driver Paul Godfrey and conductor Benny Moore are real family men. Affectionately, they are called Uncle Benny and Uncle Paul. Mothers think the world of Uncle Benny, who's a top-notcher at getting prams and babies in and out of buses without breaking a thing. Just the same, the Husbands Association is threatening to blackball him. They say he's setting too high a standard. Bus runs from Northcote to Melbourne. And the only improvement it needs is a loudspeaker breathing lullabies and a captive cow. Easy street, switch her on the right, madam, greengrocer across the road, pick you up on the return trip. Service, we'll say it's service. Practical, original, and deserving of the highest commendation. Full marks to the tramway board, and a rattle and a whistle for Uncle Benny and Uncle Paul. Colin Hughes, Footscray engineer, has solved the problem of the motorcycle owner with a petrol ration of only a gallon a month. He designed and built this miniature gas producer at a total cost of 25 shillings. He can travel at speeds up to 50 miles per hour and covers 40 miles on a 12-pound hopper of charcoal. When Hughes goes on a holiday jaunt, he simply lights his little charcoal fire and away he goes. Having thoughtfully posted a head packet of charcoal addressed to himself, it's so cheap he finds he owes himself money. No freak, the unit has proved 100% successful under vigorous testing. It has only one fault. Cyclists' girlfriends are burnt up about it. It's red hot on pillion riders.
Man's ingenuity contrives to keep ahead of human problems, and in Australia, any invention concerning the land is of vital importance. Rather than burn off stubble after harvesting, some farmers like to leave it on the ground as a protection against erosion. As it cultivates and sows, this original type combine gets clogged with stubble mulch, and it's a tedious process to clean it out. But Mr. John Stevens of Tamworth, recently discharged WWII pilot, has invented a device to attach to such combines for stubble mulch farming. The attachment keeps the stubble moving and deposits the mulch evenly on the soil, enabling the ground to hold its moisture. Simple but effective. Also of agricultural interest is a new type of post hole digger, demonstrated in Melbourne. The drill uses a new type of alloy developed for aircraft use. The invention was submitted to Army Inventions Directorate and developed by a die casting company. It saves a lot of back-breaking toil, but I hope my dentist never gets to hear of it. Here a builder uses the drill for housing foundations. And talking of housing, Mr. A.V. Hunter of Coogee helps the problem with a new idea for interlocking building bricks without mortar. He claims that an unskilled man can build his own home of these bricks and that they would halve the cost of home construction. Easy to assemble, the patent brick is crack-proof and weatherproof and does not need skilled tradesmen for its assembly. If rain should penetrate the outer casing, internal drainage takes care of the moisture. A firm wall, automatically plumbed. Mr. Hunter claims the bricks can be mass-produced in any color, and a completed section can be suspended without support. Right, Mr. Hunter? Just put a door on it, and I'll take it as it stands.
In a Sydney factory, a new Australian-designed and made light aircraft has its first public demonstration. The prototype has made successful test flights and more are being produced. The plane, called the Victa Air Tourer, is an all-metal low-wing monoplane. The 100-horsepower engine gives the plane a top speed of 133 miles an hour. The Air Tourer will have a ceiling of 15,000 feet, a range of 840 miles, and a petrol consumption of about 20 miles to the gallon. New Australian plane gets a press welcome, and Victa's chairman, Mr. M.V. Richardson, talks to test pilot Green after a short flight. Then the Air Tourer takes off for a demonstration flight. An Australian-made light plane which will cost less than £4,000.
You're looking at the latest aid for those daring young men who hang around outside skyscraper buildings. It's a cage with an air suction system that holds it steady while the maintenance men clear away accumulated dust and grime from high-rise window panes. The air cushion cage is the brainchild of an Australian company which says its invention means skyscrapers will no longer need costly provision for conventional maintenance platforms. Suction fans pull nylon bristles on the cage against the building wall, where it clings like a limpet. Height adjustment and sideways mobility comes from a mobile gantry mounted on rails on the roof. But once the air cushion cage grabs onto that wall, even the strongest winds can't shift it. The inventor, Mr. E.W. Cox, developed the cage in 18 months and says there's nothing like it in the world. On display at Hoxton Park, Liverpool, the largest piece of coal hauling equipment wholly designed and built in Australia, the Favco hauler. It's mobile and rugged, capable of moving 100 tons at a time. The coal hauler is almost big enough to get lost in. The opening trays allow the hauler to dump the coal onto a stockpile in under 10 seconds at the press of a button. The unit, 68 feet long, 13.5 feet wide and 14 feet high, has been specially designed for Costain mining for work at the new Liddell power station site. No doubt once they've proved themselves, there'll be a demand matching the size of these made-in-Australia mechanical monsters. Let's look at the water gel blanket, a new Australian-developed aid to extinguish flames on a human body or for use as an instant first aid dressing. Normal methods of extinguishing a fire leave a victim badly burned, even if action is taken within seconds. The water gel blanket instantly extinguishes the blaze and immediately begins to heal and soothe any burns that may be suffered. Water gel liquid may be used without the blanket. Liberally applied to the feet and legs, it gives protection even against direct flame. The wearer would be a smash hit at one of those native walking on the red-hot coals contests. Here's a demonstration of how the water gel blanket can be used to escape through the flames of a burning building, or even for emergency protection in a bushfire. Now here we go again, but this time a professional stuntman who knows just what to expect. It's the unexpected that causes fire tragedies. Perhaps this invention will help prevent some of them in the future.
Now here's a fastener that has no zip. It doesn't need to. Instead, it spirals and has a strength and flexibility unknown to the old-type fasteners. And it's Australian, the wartime invention of Sydney brothers Richard and Gerard Goldner. The experts said they couldn't do it here, so the Goldners got some old equipment and went ahead making it. Soon the air forces of the WWII and the Americans were asking for every inch of fastener the Goldners could turn out. The two coils are made from special wire. One coil fits inside the other to make a perfect lock. They stitch them onto the canvas, and the fastener is complete. A doctor's emergency bag that can be opened in 2 seconds. The spiral works both ways, up or down. One coupling opens the fastener as the other closes. And here's how it works. The two coils lock into a firm mesh that cannot be broken. The services found its wartime value, and it has many civilian uses, like this bag. 3 spiral fasteners on this bag allow it to be used in many shapes. And it's strong. Richard Goldner swings his whole weight from a fastener to show what the spirals can take. You can tie it in knots. Double knots, if you like. Throw it on the floor and stamp on it. And the spirals work as well as ever. A wartime invention for peacetime Australia.
Pop's made up his mind at last. He's going to get the winter firewood in. Nothing to it, really. Well, not much. After his chop. Oh, backseat driver. How the heck did that happen? Things would have been different if Pop had only got a few tips first from two Melbourne engineers, W. Herskovich and A.P. Tabering, inventors of this remarkable wood chopping machine. It splits sawn blocks at the rate of 60 tons a day. Here's that man again. Yes, Pop's got his dander up. I thought so. Censor, please. The censorship at work. Oh, it's too much even for the dog. Just look at this, Pop, and learn how. Those axe heads are coming down with a force of 22 tons. And here's the result. Who done it? Pop's not sure, but he thinks it might have been a woodpecker.
No, we're not on the moon, and it's not out of a science fiction movie either. This is the latest word in citrus sprayers and has won for its inventor national acclaim. Designer and builder of the weird-looking machine is citrus grower Charlie Roy, who lives in the sleepy Queensland rural town of Beerwah. Like a giant metal octopus, the sprayer has arms that move in all directions. Completely home-built, Charlie Roy says the controls look complex, but they're really very simple. When you know how. In action, the sprayer pumps more than 100 gallons of waterborne chemicals a minute. The unique multiple action of the sprayer arms ensures that every leaf is sprayed on both sides. Charlie has used the sprayer for 1 or 2 seasons now. Says he's getting his best ever crop of oranges and lemons, and they're all disease and pest-free. Spraying 2 rows of citrus trees at once and halving the time needed for conventional sprays, the 10-tonner carries 1,000 gallons of spray and took 18 months to build. Charlie Roy is understandably proud of his invention, but he has no intention of taking out a patent on it. He says if anybody wants to copy it, they're welcome. But he adds they'd better know what they're letting themselves in for. It was so much hard work. If he'd known before, he might never have started.
Most grocers keep special lines under the counter, but H.S. McConchy of Elstonwick, Victoria, makes no secret of his. Maybe that's because they have nothing to do with business. Grocer McConchy serves his customers and then becomes artist McConchy. Without training, he paints miniature masterpieces. Mr. McConchy is never short of canvas. He doesn't need it. He paints his scenes on gum leaves collected in the bush. Each leaf, pressed for 6 months in a book until it is dry and flat, is painted in 20 minutes. He sent his paintings to Winston Churchill and Princess Margaret and received warm letters of thanks from both. And no wonder, with delightful scenes like these. Here's a tree at sunset. A country scene with paint and the leaf's contours cleverly combined. This is Australian art, if you like. Australian artist, the Australian countryside, and painted on a gum leaf. Mr. McConchy's a grocer. He may sell tea leaves, but gum leaves are his real special.
Army field exercises are the proving ground for the latest portable wireless station for the infantryman. An important feature of this latest Australian invention is that at fighting distances, the operator looks no different from any other soldier. A range of 5 miles ensures that headquarters are well informed of frontline development. Prior to field tests, extreme battle conditions are simulated in the laboratory. The vibration test indicates that the portable transceiver can take plenty of rough treatment without harm. The unit is placed in an altitude chamber to gain data on its reaction to high altitude operation with resultant low temperatures. The transmitter, receiver, and batteries are all housed in aluminium cases sealed with rubber, and though considerably iced up during this test, perfect operation is still possible. The complete unit weighs only 20 pounds, and a soldier can be taught to use it proficiently in a matter of hours. In field tests carried out in Malaya, the portable radio station came through with flying colors and is at present undergoing tests in Great Britain and the United States. 4 years of intensive research in Australian laboratories has had its reward as the mighty midget contributes its share in the tasks of the Australian fighting men.
For the man on the land, his tractor is his lifeblood. But it's only as good as the equipment that goes with it. And this revolutionary new plow looks like opening up tracts of land that were once thought worthless. To give it its full name, it's the Bunyip Slipper Imp and Shakerator, but we'll settle for the Bunyip. Developed by the Sydney firm of Yeomans, part of the secret of the Bunyip's success lies in the design of these interchangeable wombat and bat's wing slippers, which are quickly installed and removed. To the power takeoff of the tractor, the Bunyip vibrates as it plows and aerates the soil. The combination of vibrating plowing actions enables an ordinary tractor to handle work that bigger machinery wouldn't be able to get through. The machine, which has won the Prince Philip Prize for Australian design, is expected to revolutionize the method of soil care and cultivation throughout the world, and to replace tillage implements which have been used by man for thousands of years, such as the disc and moldboard plows and the harrow. And there's the proof of the Bunyip's efficiency. Soft, aerated earth, ready for sowing. Farmer, another mechanical advance for production in a hungry world.
One of the richest districts in New South Wales is Camden Park, where in the early 19th century, Captain John MacArthur established Australia's mighty wool industry. Carrying on a great tradition, MacArthur's descendants have built here one of the world's most modern dairies. This is the Rotolactor, a huge mechanical milking machine wholly built in Australia. To ensure absolute hygiene, the plant is thoroughly sterilized between each milking. The cows are directed into the Rotolactor through a special one-way lane, where footbaths are provided as a further precaution against harmful bacteria. Inside the circular building is a revolving platform, and each cow steps into a bale on this moving floor. Each bale is fitted with a separate milking machine and feed box. Once Daisy is safely locked in position, the udder is washed before the milking machine is connected. The platform makes a complete circuit of the building in 10 minutes, and the Rotolactor has a capacity of 300 cows an hour. A constant check is made of milk quality and yield per cow. With 50 bales operating at once, a constant flow of milk goes on its way to consumers in Sydney's city and suburbs, or to factories for processing into numerous byproducts. With milking completed, the cows leave their merry-go-round through a centre ramp and contentedly amble back to pasture. Australia's Rotolactor, the bright star of a gleaming new Milky Way.
From the drawing board at Phillips Works at Hendon, South Australia, comes the design for a radioisotope probe, a vital part of an on-stream analysis system for the recovery of minerals. The castings for the probes are designed to withstand the erosive and corrosive action of mineral slurries. Modern electronic techniques, including space-age integrated circuits, have been built into the design. In these detector assemblies, reliability and easy maintenance are essential. Some probes will be used in remote mineral processing plants where maintenance facilities are limited. Complete analysis systems have been installed in 5 Australian locations. One of these is the new Broken Hill. Ore comes from the mine on a conveyor belt and goes to the crushing mill to be ground and mixed with water to form a slurry. It's in these slurries that variations in the richness of the ore could pass undetected, hence the need for constant on-stream analysis. Probes of different types to detect different minerals are inserted in the slurry and clamped into permanent position. The Australian system was the result of a cooperative development program involving the Zinc Corporation, the Australian Atomic Energy Commission, Phillips, and the Australian Mineral Development Laboratories. Signals from the probes go to a mini-computer, which is programmed to provide a continuous printout of analytical data. The Phillips system has already aroused considerable interest from mineral plants overseas. At the Australian National University in Canberra, the Industrial Design Council of Australia announced that the system has won the 1973 Prince Philip Prize. Among the guests are the former Country Party leader, Sir John McEwen, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Whitlam. The chairman, Sir Thomas Ramsay, introduces Prince Philip to the chairman and managing director of Phillips, Mr. Hire.
The original flotation process was developed by Australia.
And also the leader of the team which designed the system, Mr. Duncan Glenn. His Royal Highness presents the coveted award. An Australian development which will add to our mineral wealth wins the Prince Philip Award for 1973.
The city of Perth, capital of Western Australia, is the scene of an exciting engineering achievement, the orbital engine. Inventor Ralph Sarridge, 34, has evolved an engine that will mean big savings in cost and space. It could bring about radical changes in automobile design and affect other branches of engineering. The combustion chambers are arranged around a single central piston, which orbits a central axis to drive the crankshaft. The unit is considerably smaller than a conventional automobile engine. Ralph Sarridge has been interested in things mechanical since childhood. The orbital engine is the result of 3 years of research into ways of overcoming what he saw as the basic problems of the rotary type engine. The orbital engine is not a rotary, but it incorporates some conventional engineering features with a number of completely new concepts. The orbital engine has a higher power-to-weight ratio than the reciprocating engine. When fully developed, it should weigh about 45 kilograms, but be as powerful as a conventional V8. It should be relatively simple and cheap to manufacture on a large scale. In a family car, the engine looks no bigger than a spare tire. The new engine has excited both Australian and overseas interest. Australia's biggest private company, Broken Hill Proprietary, has underwritten its development. Ralph Sarridge already is adapting the engine to uses other than automotive. A new era in transport and many other industries may be ushered in by an idea conceived and developed by a young Australian inventor.
Mr. C.V.L. Mitchell of Brisbane has invented a machine to take the bad language out of telephone bills. With this device, you tick up your own tuppence, and at the end of the quarter, the little roll of paper tells you which numbers you dialed when. It fits any automatic phone, and when you adjust the cover, there's a key to the whole conversational situation. It protects the subscriber against illicit calls, says Mr. Mitchell, and gives him a check on the Postal Department's charges. Dial away to your heart's content, and this little gadget tots up every call you make. No more arguments about the size of your telephone account.
After using the prehistoric-style mower to plough through his front lawn at Mossdale, Sydney, Mr. Cyril Thomas reckoned he'd earned a spell. How could he dodge the back-breaking task of mowing the lawn? Suddenly, in the spinning blades of the fan, he found inspiration. After testing his idea, he started work in his workshop on his brainchild. Mr. Thomas constructed a cutter which works on the principle of the whirring blades of the electric fan. He used the motor out of his wife's sewing machine and believed his back brakes were over. At the firm where he is employed as machine shop superintendent, Mr. Thomas showed the plans of his electric lawnmower to the senior executives, who agreed to commence mass production. The chassis was pressed from heavy gauge sheet steel, and the motor was housed in an aluminium die casting. Everything was designed for robustness with minimum weight. Here we see the finishing of the coil for the electric motor. This power unit is not designed to propel the mower. It merely operates the cutting blade. The whole unit weighs only 24 pounds. The wheels are of toughened rubber. The cutting blade may be adjusted quickly to 5 different levels and can cut through tall grass. The main fingertip control is in the handle. Australian ingenuity improves on older methods and is making a clean sweep of lawns both here and overseas.
Ships which move through the water unaided by propellers, engines, or any moving part. That's the dream of Australian scientist Percy Wilde and his partner William Wellnizer. And it's no idle dream. They've proved it's practicable. Wilde has been experimenting with engineless marine propulsion for 15 years, and in 1942 showed his invention to government officials. He showed them this tiny power plant, a complete propulsion unit which also controlled steering. That's all there was, a tiny plant and a small flame to boil water. In 1942, wartime security forbade mention of this invention. Today, jet propulsion of aircraft is a fact, and Wilde and Wellnizer believe airlift propulsion of ships is just as feasible. The power plant drives the model by the thrust of air pressure. What that plant can do in a model, they claim, a larger one can do for an ocean liner, battleship, or aircraft carrier. There are no moving parts. Sharp turns or berthing are simplified by the operation of additional jets near the ship's bows, eliminating all need for rudder and propellers. Wilde and Wellnizer's scheme received official attention, and they were granted finance to construct other models for fuller demonstrations. Experiments today are being made overseas, seeking to adapt jet propulsion techniques to marine engines. These two Australians may not yet have found the answer, but these models show that they have discovered something, that they have evolved a power plant able to move a ship, a plant that is simple, easily constructed, and capable of making great savings in man-hours and machine steel. In their Tasmanian factory, they're continuing their experiments. The ship of the future may yet be jet-propelled.
A perfectly grooved swing is the trademark of the world's greatest golfers. It's the basis upon which they build their game and takes years of practice to acquire. But such time and opportunity is not available to the average weekend hacker, and how he suffers. If it gets that way, the game is hardly worth the frustration. And for those who gain strength in anger, it can be very costly too. But at last, there's some hope for them. Professional Keith Clark comes to their rescue with the Golf Swing Coordinator, an ultra-modern piece of equipment designed to align arms, shoulders, knees and hips so that the same position is maintained throughout the swing. Balance is thereby stabilized. Son of 3-time Australian Open champion Carnegie Clark, Keith introduces the Coordinator, and in so doing has earned the eternal gratitude of those he's brought back from the brink of despair.
Freshwater, North Queensland, 6 miles from Cairns, gets right on the news map. The 3 Lucas boys, toiling at their idea of making the backyard a place fit to live or die in. Here's Jack, a railway man. Frank, who drives a tractor. and young Ray, a concrete worker. This is how they've used their spare time. Completed outside their own back door a crater 16 feet deep, 26 feet in diameter. They call it the Whirl of Death, and they take it around the country if you can figure out how they transport it. Ray Lucas, cyclist, shows how this unique racetrack works. And is Freshwater proud of its death whirl? Mrs. Lucas, too. Why, she helped the boys make the pit, didn't you, Mum? Ray slips into racing speed. Looks monotonous, but how educational. How many young fellows can go for a trip round the whirl every day? Frank Lucas's turn now. The big thrill in the Whirl of Death is letting the motorbike go flat out and trying to catch her own tail light. Frank's keeping track as he passes them, and he reckons 347 cameramen are shooting this picture. Now Jack Lucas clamps on the crash helmet, and we climb down into the bottom of the pit. Boy, if he gets a puncture, so will we. In which event will the spectators kindly shovel some dirt in and go reverently home. This is the house that Jack built. And this is the Jack that built the house. Jack Anderson of Pascoe Vale, Victoria. He builds furniture, too, in a tiny workshop at the back of his home. How's that for a chair? Yes, he's a handy man, all right. That neat, polished dining alcove is more of his work, built in with the skill of a master craftsman. And he's not a carpenter. Believe it or not, Jack's a butcher. Bases of that lounge are spiral springs from old car seats. What more could a family want? Furniture? An attractive home? And now don't say he built that car too. Yes, you're right again. And what a car it is. Jack Anderson served in the RWWII, and he claims his car has aerodynamic efficiency. Of course, he's had practice. This is his third model, and all homemade. Jack bought a second-hand chassis and engine and then set to work. He beat all the panels by hand and took 8 months to produce this streamlined model. Quite a boy, this Jack. When Mrs. Anderson and daughters Carol and Susan want to leave their homemade furniture and house, they drive off in a homemade car. This Jack Anderson's a jack of all trades.
Also true, and not as crazy as they may seem, are the natty notions of Melbourne inventor Captain Nurse of Heathmont. His knitting machine has been patented since 1938, a sort of mini invention. But if mini skirts continue in the fashion spotlight, it could still catch on. Winter's now a cold memory away, but maybe there's hope next year for this reflector fire. This is a water clock. It looks complicated, and maybe it is. But just the same, the Museum of Applied Sciences in Melbourne is interested in it, and they have a similar model in operation there. Here's something that could be handy now that the warm weather's on the way, an automatic timer for switching on the garden sprayer. It doesn't matter whether you're at home or not. With a device like this, your flowers never get thirsty. This ingenious device by Captain Nurse switches itself off. It's a real water saver.
Men, if you want a household help who won't nag, gossip, or rifle your wallet, why not let Robert the Robo walk over your threshold? He does everything but talk, while a woman... Invented by Bernard Smith of Camberwell, Melbourne, is 6 feet tall and pours the tea with the grace of a duchess. His weight, if you must know, is 1/4 of a ton, and dieting won't help. Inside, he has 13 electric motors and 200 yards of wiring, and he'll do your bidding if you press the right button in the remote control. Bring the child in, show it to Dada, and then swing it to sleep. Certainly, boss. Robert can go forward or backward, to the right or left, or just stand still. He can lift a couple of 100 pounds, but never throws rolling pins or back answers. Carpet's a bit dirty? Leave it to Robert. He's the perfect household help, all right. Costs nothing for food, clothes, or drink. Always happy in his chores. Leaves you in peace when you press the button. Yes, he's got everything. Absolutely everything. Robert, don't you dare wink, you forward little robo, you.
At the Grange, Brisbane, Mr. Daniel McLeish is building what he hopes will be a perpetual motion machine. It's 33 feet high, and the council says it has to come down. But the 91-year-old inventor has been given a few weeks' grace to complete and test it first. How does it work? Well, Mr. McLeish hopes to start it with a small motor, then switch the motor off, and hopes the thing still keeps going on its own momentum. Scientists have long been baffled by perpetual motion, but even if this doesn't work, Mr. McLeish, still active at 91, certainly seems to have discovered the secret of keeping himself in perpetual motion.
The do-it-yourself craze has spread to the air, and a couple of Sydney handymen have built their own helicopters. This one is supposed to take to the skies at the end of a tow line, but though the blades whirl round and the tow truck hits top speed, the helicopter just refuses to leave good old Mother Earth. So let's leave him and pop over to Bankstown, where former Queenslander John Emerson has his gyrocopter ready for takeoff. Emerson climbs aboard, the tow line's ready, and off he goes. He's going up too, even if it is a rock and roll takeoff. The copter has no motor, so the tow line can't be slipped. But Emerson hopes to fit an engine, and when he does, he can slip the tow and really fly. The first of the homemade whirlybirds.
You've heard of the man they could not hang. Here's the man they could not stun, John Gilding of Sydney.
When a man gets hit on the head with a hammer, it usually spells concussion. I have invented a patent hat saddle which makes this an impossibility, as I will demonstrate. No, not yet. The idea can be adapted to war and all classes of crash helmets and is easily fitted and removed. Well, now, as you seem very anxious to have a hit, what about using this?